nice people, you know. they they look very frightening, but they're really very nice. Our Halloween night guest. And by the way, tonight, look out for surprises. Ladies and gentlemen, Fear!
On Halloween night in 1981, the set of Saturday Night Live erupted into pure chaos. This is the story about how a first-generation Southern California punk rock band, Fear, were guests on Saturday Night Live, destroyed the set, and ultimately were permanently banned from ever coming back on the show. Fear wasn't a famous band. They came up in the underground punk rock scene in the late 70s with bands like Social Distortion, The Germs, and others. The 1979 punk rock documentary, The Decline of Western Civilization, that had been filmed the couple years prior, it had been released that year and was the most exposure the band had gotten up to that point. That was all about to change. They had an appearance on the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live. They were that week's musical guest. It's odd, right? How did they get put on Saturday Night Live, a very mainstream show for a very not mainstream punk rock band? I mean, how did a small-time Southern California punk rock band actually get the shot on one of the biggest shows on television? Well, SNL alum John Belushi happened to be a huge rabid fan of the band. That's how. It's all about who you know, right? The story goes that John Belushi, while watching TV one night on like a local LA TV station, he catches a live performance of the band Fear. Their sound was dangerous. It was aggressive. He was immediately hooked. My guy was enamored by the punk rock visual, the sound. After seeing that live performance, he goes around town. He becomes friends with a few guys in the band. He was attempting to have them be involved with a film project of his. I believe the film was called Neighbors. Ultimately, the band declined being in the movie, but they were convinced to write and record a song that would be used for the end credits in the movie. Lee Ving, the singer of Fear, had told Rolling Stone magazine that he wasn't looking forward to singing a song where the lyrics that he wrote were for a person in a film that he had nothing to do with. He had intended for John Belushi to sing the song. Ultimately, both men ended up sharing vocal duties on the song. Unfortunately, John Belushi loved the song, and the studio absolutely hated it, therefore it wasn't included in the film. This left him feeling embarrassed, like he had let himself down and his new friends. Undeterred, though, Belushi had an idea of a way to make it up to the band. He would get them to play on Saturday Night Live. John Belushi was one of the more popular personalities the weekend program ever had. So he knew the combination of that popularity and the decreasing ratings for the show would make for an easy way to convince the showrunners to give this blossoming punk rock band a chance on one of the biggest stages in the world. First, he got the head writer on his team, a guy named Michael O'Donoghue. Then, together with Michael, he went and told the showrunners that if they could get Fear to be that night's musical guest, that he would make a guest appearance as a favor. He would be like a celebrity guest that night or whatever, right? I mean, that would be a surefire way to drive up viewership, and maybe it would just be the spark that led to an explosion in renewed popularity for the show. All parties involved agreed that this was a no-brainer, and so it was set. This relatively unknown punk rock band called Fear would be the musical guest on Saturday Night Live. I mean, what could really go wrong? Well, he didn't mention this to the show heads, but John Belushi, determined to make the performance as authentically punk as possible, he contacted all his friends and local punkers from DC and surrounding areas and had them take a bus to the New York City studio to fill out the studio audience. When talking about this performance, Lee Ving had said that Belushi said he wanted like a dozen or so people for the audience, but the bus also stopped in Baltimore and Philly before getting back to New York. So there were like 35-40 people on that bus when they got here. And on that bus, and in that crowd, specifically, there were 3 names of note. Ian MacKaye of Minor Threat was there, Roger Merritt of Agnostic Front was there, and Harry Flanagan of the Cro-Mags was there. And I believe you can see Ian MacKaye on stage, and I think he even shouted something in the mic at one point during the performance. Every week, SNL has a celebrity host that does a monologue, and then they are involved in a fair amount of the skits. That week, the host was Donald Pleasance, who played Dr. Loomis in the John Carpenter slasher movie Halloween. Seeing as that this was actually Halloween of 1981, that guest made a lot of sense. Typically, that would be a banger of a guest host, but this time, he was overshadowed by the frightening punk rock band that were scary and dangerous in real life, not just the movies. Fear didn't play very long. It only took 2 songs for them to make a permanent mark on pop culture. They blasted through 2 tracks. One was Beef Bologna, and the other being New York is Alright If You Like Saxophone. And 36 plus feral punk rock kids from all over the east coast of the country went absolutely nuts on the studio floor. Mosh pits, slam dancing, pogo, stage dives, they were no longer a thing only experienced in dingy dark clubs in the cities. It was being broadcast all over the country and into the family rooms of the cookie-cutter homes in the suburbs via backlit TV screens, being huddled around by families as if it was freezing outside and that tube was fire needed to keep warm. It's kind of like a car wreck. When you drive by, you just have to take a look, right? Something I find interesting is the kids in the audience that were there to see Fear, they weren't the only audience members in attendance either. The regular studio audience for SNL were bewildered and shocked. They were probably terrified. These punk rockers had taken over the studio and they brought mayhem with them. They became unhinged, breaking production equipment, throwing a pumpkin at a producer and hitting him in the chest. And then someone grabbed a hot mic and screamed curse words on the mic on the live TV. I think that was Ian MacKaye, honestly. Remember, this was 1981. That was not okay back then. That made Saturday Night Live so mad that they immediately cut to a pre-recorded sketch starring Eddie Murphy to prevent more of the chaos. Lee Ving recalled that the main guy from NBC was at home watching with his wife, and they freaked out. They called the station, and they started screaming into the phone, "Go to stock footage! Cut, cut, cut!" Headlines afterward would describe the scene as a riot, with the New York Post claiming the show's staff was, quote-unquote, glad to be alive following that event. "I've been in the business for years, and I've never seen anything like this," one unnamed NBC technician told the Post. "This was a life-threatening situation. It's amazing no one was killed." A Saturday Night Live spokesperson disputed such reports, claiming the severity of the damage, which some estimated to be $200,000, was actually much less. "Nobody was hurt and nothing was smashed," the rep explained to Billboard. Ultimately, this was much ado about nothing. I mean, it was a bunch of rowdy kids being a bunch of rowdy kids. Nobody got hurt. Nothing was, permanently destroyed. It likely did more good than harm, I would think. This stuff tends to live on in infamy forever. Still, Fear's antics earned him a lifetime ban from Saturday Night Live, something Ving admitted he took pride in. "They swore that night they'd never rebroadcast our footage," he says. "As a result, I've become one of the esteemed members of the permanently banned from Saturday Night Live." So there you have it. That's the story of how 40 plus years ago, John Belushi and Fear got together and caused a bunch of mayhem on Saturday Night Live and then got the band permanently banned from the show. I find that to be a pretty interesting story. I had heard about it once or twice before, but I didn't know a lot about how it all came to be. So, yeah, if you're enjoying these videos, please let me know in the comments. If you have any recommendations or anything, let me know. You can check out my Patreon if you want to be further involved with the channel. We have a Discogs store and some merch. It's all linked in the description. If you have any trouble finding something you're looking for, just let me know and I'll take care of you. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I worked really hard on this video and I'm having a good time. So thank you so much for being a part of it. I appreciate it. Like I said, have a great day and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.